The woman in room 6 has been dead for 11 years. I know that now. I know it because I pulled her name from the ledger. The real ledger, the one they keep under the counter in a locked steel box. And I Googled her obituary on my phone at 4 in the morning while something walked the balcony outside, dragging its fingers along every door like it was reading Braille. Margaret Calloway, 54, of Cuba, New Mexico. Survived by 2 daughters. Services held at Riverside Funeral Home, Albuquerque. Died August 9, 2015. She checked in on a Tuesday. She tipped me $3. She asked if the vending machine had Dr. Pepper. I told her it did. That conversation happened 6 nights ago. So you need to understand something before I tell you the rest. I don't believe in ghosts. I still don't. What I believe in now is worse. I believe the Sundowner Motor Lodge sits on something that doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. Something that operates on terms so alien to human thinking that the best the people before me could do, the best anyone could do, was write a set of rules and pray you followed them. I didn't follow all of them. And I need to tell you exactly what happened in order because I think the sequence matters. I think it matters like a combination lock matters, like the right order of numbers is the difference between a door opening and staying shut forever. And I need to figure out which door I opened. My name is Emmett Royce. I'm 31. And 6 weeks ago I was sleeping in my car behind a Love's travel stop outside Flagstaff with $43 to my name and a LinkedIn profile that might as well have been a suicide note. Here's what nobody tells you about going broke in your 30s. It's quiet. There's no dramatic moment. No scene where you stand in the rain screaming at God. You just wake up one morning in the backseat of a 2014 Nissan Sentra that smells like old French fries and feet. And you check your bank account, and the number is real. And you think, so this is it. I'd been a project coordinator for a logistics firm in Phoenix. Mid-level, decent enough salary. Then the company restructured. That's the word they use, restructured, like they're renovating a house instead of gutting 40 people's lives overnight. I got the call on a Thursday, had my stuff in a box by Friday, applied to 300 jobs in 2 months, got 4 interviews, got 0 offers. The apartment went first, then the storage unit. I sold everything that wouldn't fit in the Sentra. I tried DoorDash for a while, but the math never worked. You're burning gas to earn gas money. I drove east because east felt like the only direction I hadn't tried yet, and because a guy I used to work with said there was warehouse work in Albuquerque. There wasn't. He'd heard wrong, or the positions were filled, or they never existed in the first place. Doesn't matter. What matters is that I was sitting in a truck stop diner outside Gallup, New Mexico, drinking a coffee I'd paid for with coins, when I saw the index card. It was pinned to a corkboard by the bathrooms, between a flyer for a missing dog and an ad for a faith healer in Farmington. Handwritten in blue ink, neat block letters. Night clerk wanted. Sundowner Motor Lodge. Highway 602 South. $800 per week cash. Room included. Ask for Warren. No experience needed. Must be willing to work alone. $800 a week, cash, with a room. I read it 3 times. I checked the back of the card for a punchline. I looked around the diner like someone might be watching to see who was desperate enough to bite. Then I tore the card off the board, got in my car, and drove south. Highway 602 runs straight out of Gallup toward Zuni Pueblo, cutting through a landscape that looks like God started painting and gave up. Red mesa rock and scrub brush and a sky so wide it makes you feel like you're being watched from every direction. The elevation sits around 6,800 feet, and in late February, the air is thin and cold and tastes like dust and juniper. I found the Sundowner about 12 miles south of town, set back from the highway behind a gravel lot. It looked exactly like what you're picturing. Single-story L-shaped building, maybe 20 rooms, Stucco exterior painted a shade of turquoise that had faded to the color of an old swimming pool. Flat roof. A sign out front shaped like a setting sun. Half the neon tubes dead. The office sat at the corner of the L, and beyond it, the building wrapped around a parking lot with 3 vehicles in it. A pickup, a sedan, and a van with Arizona plates. Behind the motel, there was nothing. Just desert, running flat until it hit a ridge of low hills, maybe 2 miles out. The kind of landscape where you could walk for an hour and never reach anything. I parked and sat there for a second. The wind was pushing sand across the lot in little S-curves. A piece of trash was pinned against the office door, fluttering. The place looked abandoned, except for those 3 vehicles, and I remember thinking, this is either going to be fine, or this is where they find my body. But I went in, because $43 is $43, and pride is a luxury I'd already pawned. The office was small and warm, wood-paneled walls, brown carpet, a counter with a bell on it. Behind the counter, a pegboard with room keys. Actual metal keys on diamond-shaped plastic fobs. There was a TV mounted in the corner showing a satellite weather map with the sound off. The whole place smelled like coffee and something else, something faintly chemical, like the residue left when you burn a match. The man behind the counter was already looking at me when I walked in. Warren Buell was maybe 65, maybe older. Hard to tell. He had the kind of face the desert makes. Deep creases, sun-stained skin, pale blue eyes that looked like they'd been bleached, thin white hair combed straight back. He was wearing a flannel shirt buttoned to the throat, and a turquoise bolo tie that looked like it cost more than my car. He didn't say hello. He just watched me approach the counter and set the index card down between us. "I'm here about the job," I said. He looked at the card, then back at me. Then he said, "You sleeping in your car?" It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." "How long?" "About 3 weeks." He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. "You want anything? Drugs, alcohol, anything that's going to be a problem?" "No, sir, I'm clean." "You a veteran?" "No." "Criminal record?" "No." He studied me for a long time. I've been looked at by hiring managers, HR people, interviewers in glass conference rooms, and none of them ever looked at me the way Warren did. He wasn't assessing my qualifications, he was assessing something else, something about my composition, my material, like he was checking whether I was made of the right stuff. "You got family?" he asked. "Not really. Parents passed. Sister in Ohio, but we don't talk." "Good," he said. Then he caught himself, or maybe he didn't. "I mean, you won't be distracted." He reached under the counter and brought out a single sheet of paper folded in thirds. He set it in front of me but kept his hand on it. "Pay is $800 a week, cash, every Monday morning. You get room 1. It's around the back, separate entrance, not part of the guest block. Shift is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You check people in, you handle the desk, you keep the lot lit, you keep the property clean. That's the job." "Okay." "This," he said, pressing his fingers down on the folded paper, "is the other part. I need you to read this tonight. I need you to read it carefully, and I need you to follow it exactly." "What is it?" "Operating procedures," he said, "for the night shift." He slid the paper toward me. I reached for it and he didn't let go right away. Our fingers almost touched across the fold. "Emmett," he said. And I hadn't told him my name yet. And I didn't think about that until much later. "This is a good job. A lot of people would want this job, but it requires a specific kind of person. Someone who can follow directions without needing to understand them. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, because I needed $800 a week, and because I was tired, and because when you've been sleeping in a Nissan Sentra for 3 weeks, you'll agree to almost anything. He let go of the paper. Room 1 keys on the pegboard. Get some sleep. Come back at 10 tonight, and I'll show you the desk. Room 1 was around the back of the building, separated from the guest rooms by a utility closet and a breezeway. It was small, twin bed, nightstand, lamp, a bathroom with a shower stall so tight you had to back in. But the sheets were clean and the heater worked and the water was hot, and I sat on the edge of that bed and cried for about 45 seconds. Because it had been 3 weeks since I'd been inside a room that was mine. Then I unfolded the paper. It was typewritten. Old typewriter, not a printer. You could see the uneven impressions where some letters struck harder than others. The paper itself was heavy, cream-colored, the kind you'd find in a stationery store. At the top, in all caps, Sundowner Motor Lodge, Night Shift Protocol. Below that, a list, 17 items. I'm going to give them to you exactly as they were written because the wording matters. Every word of it matters. 1. Your shift begins at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. Do not leave the office during your shift unless Protocol 7 or Protocol 14 requires it. The front door must remain unlocked at all times. 2. Guests may check in at any hour. Process them normally, accept cash or card. Assign them to any available room except rooms 9, 14, and 18. These rooms are permanently reserved and must never be opened for any reason. 3. If a guest asks for room 9, 14, or 18 by number, tell them it is occupied. Do not explain further. If they insist, cancel their reservation and ask them to leave. Do not argue. Do not apologize. 4. At 11 p.m., turn off the parking lot floodlights using the switch behind the counter, red switch far left. Leave them off until 11:20 p.m. During this window, do not look out the office windows. Find something to read. 5. Between midnight and 2 a.m., you may hear footsteps on the roof. This is normal and does not require action. Do not go onto the roof. 6. If the phone at the front desk rings between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., answer it. You will hear a woman's voice reading numbers. Write the numbers down on the pad provided. Do not speak. When she stops, hang up. Leave the pad on the counter. It will be collected. 7. At 2 a.m. exactly, walk the ground floor corridor and confirm all exterior doors are closed. Do not knock on guest doors. Do not stop walking. Complete the circuit in under 4 minutes. 8. If during your corridor walk you see a door standing open to an unoccupied room, close it without entering. If you see a door open to an occupied room, do not close it. Walk past it at a normal pace. Do not look inside. 9. Guests may occasionally report hearing singing from the east side of the building near the hills. Tell them it is a local radio tower. There is no radio tower. 10. If a guest checks in between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., process them normally, but note the following. Do not make eye contact for longer than 2 seconds. Complete the transaction as quickly as possible. Assign them to rooms 1 through 6 only. 11. If the same guest attempts to check in a second time during the same shift, do not acknowledge that you recognize them. Process the check-in as if it were the first. Assign them a different room. Do not comment on the duplication. 12. At 4 a.m., a man may enter the office. He will be wearing a brown coat and will not speak. He will stand near the vending machines for between 10 and 40 minutes. Do not speak to him. Do not look directly at him. Continue your work. He will leave on his own. 13. If the man in the brown coat speaks to you, immediately go into the back office and lock the door. Wait 15 minutes. Do not respond to anything you hear. 14. At 4:30 a.m., go to the supply closet at the end of the east corridor and replace the hallway's overhead bulb. whether or not it is burned out. Use only the bulbs from the red box on the top shelf. Discard the old bulb in the dumpster behind the building. Do not keep old bulbs inside the structure. 15. Between 5 a.m. and 5:30 a.m., there may be a sound from rooms 9, 14, or 18. It will sound like someone knocking from the inside. Do not open these doors. Do not respond. The knocking is not a request. 16. At 5:45 a.m., turn the parking lot floodlights back on. The lights will have turned off again on their own sometime during the night. This is expected. Check the lot. If there is a vehicle you do not recognize and cannot account for, note its license plate, color, and make in the logbook. Do not approach it. 17. At 6 a.m., your shift ends. Leave the office. Go to your room. Do not look back at the building as you walk. Warren will arrive by 6:30 a.m. I read the list twice. Then I sat there on the bed with the paper in my lap and listened to the wind push against the window. My first thought was that it was a joke, some hazing ritual for the new guy, a prank Warren probably pulled on every drifter who answered his little index card. My second thought was that Warren was mentally unwell. Out here alone in the desert, running a failing motel, maybe he'd built up this elaborate mythology to give his nights meaning. I'd seen loneliness do strange things to people. Hell, I'd talked to myself for 20 minutes in a rest stop bathroom 3 days earlier. My third thought, the one that rose up slow and quiet like groundwater, $800 a week. I refolded the paper. I set it on the nightstand. I turned off the lamp. I slept. Warren showed me the desk that evening at 9:30. He was methodical, patient. He walked me through the check-in system, handwritten ledger, credit card imprinter for the receipts, the key rack, the circuit breaker panel, the location of cleaning supplies. He showed me the red switch for the floodlights. He showed me the pad of paper next to the phone. He showed me the back office. A small room with a desk, a chair, and a door that locked from the inside with a deadbolt. He showed me the supply closet at the end of the east corridor. He pointed to the red box on the top shelf. "Those bulbs," he said. "Only those. They come from a supplier in Albuquerque. I order them special. What's different about them?" He looked at me. "They're the right ones." He didn't mention the rules. He didn't reference the paper. It was like we both knew it existed and had agreed not to discuss it out loud, the way families don't mention the relative who's in prison. At 10 o'clock, he put on his hat, a gray felt cowboy hat that looked like it had survived a war, and he walked to the door. "You'll be fine," he said. "Just do the job." He left. I heard his truck start. I heard the gravel crunch as he pulled out onto 602. And then it was just me and the sundowner and the wide black desert night. Here's what I want you to understand about that first night. Nothing happened. I need you to hear that. Because the horror of this place isn't that everything goes wrong immediately. It's that everything goes right. It's that you follow the rules and the rules work, and you start to think, okay, this is manageable. This is just a weird job with weird protocols. You normalize it. You fold it into your routine and normalization. That's the trap. At 11 p.m., I flipped the red switch. The lot went dark. I sat behind the counter and read a paperback I'd found in the nightstand of room 1. A Dean Koontz novel with the cover torn off. I didn't look at the windows. At 11:20, I flipped the lights back on. Nothing had changed. At midnight, I heard the footsteps on the roof. They were real, rhythmic, like someone walking slowly from one end of the building to the other, pausing, then walking back. They went on for about 40 minutes. I stayed at the desk. At 1:30, the phone rang. I answered, a woman's voice calm and clear, reading numbers. 14, 7, 7, 31, 9, 2, 45. I wrote them down. She stopped. I hung up. I left the pad on the counter. At 2 a.m., I walked the corridor. All doors closed. The hallway smelled like that same faint chemical burn I'd noticed in the office. The lights buzzed. I completed the circuit in under 3 minutes and went back to the desk. Nobody checked in. No man in a brown coat. No singing from the hills. No knocking from rooms 9, 14, or 18. At 5:45, I turned the floodlights back on. The lot was the same 3 vehicles. At 6, I locked the register drawer, walked to room 1, and did not look back at the building. I slept like the dead. Nights 2 through 4 followed the same pattern. Footsteps on the roof. Phone call with numbers. Corridor walk. The routine calcified. I found myself almost looking forward to the phone call. The woman's voice was pleasant, like a late-night radio host reading lotto numbers. I wrote them down without thinking about what they meant. On night 3, a guest checked in at 11:40, a trucker named Dave passing through to Holbrook. I processed him normally, gave him room 4. He asked about the Wi-Fi. I told him we didn't have any. He shrugged and said, "That's why I stay at places like this." He left in the morning. Normal. On night 4, I noticed the pad of paper, the one where I'd been writing the numbers. Each morning, the previous night's numbers were gone. The top sheet was always blank when I came in for my shift. Someone was collecting them. Warren, presumably. I didn't ask. But I started copying the numbers into my phone before the pad was cleared. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Suspicion. The same instinct that makes you screenshot a weird text before you delete it. Night 5 is when Margaret Calloway checked in. It was 12:40 a.m. I was reading when the office door opened, and a woman stepped in with a gust of cold air and the smell of sage and highway dust. She was in her 50s, short, heavy-set, wearing a green fleece jacket and jeans. She had a rolling suitcase with a broken wheel that scraped against the floor. "Oh, thank God you're open," she said. "I've been driving since Albuquerque and I'm about to pass out." I smiled. I liked her immediately. She had that energy. You know the kind. Like someone's mom. Like someone who'd make you a sandwich without asking if you wanted one. "We're always open," I said. "Just need a name and a card." "Margaret Calloway," she said, digging through her purse. "And honey, do you have Dr. Pepper in that machine? I've been craving one since Grant's." "I think we do." "Bless you." I processed her. Cash. One night. I gave her room 6. I handed her the key and she thanked me 3 times, left $3 on the counter and wheeled her broken suitcase down the corridor. I listened to the wheels scrape away. The door to room 6 opened and closed. Silence. Normal. I went back to my book. I did my 2 a.m. corridor walk. All doors closed. 4 a.m. came and went. No man in the brown coat. I changed the bulb in the east corridor. I turned the floodlights on at 5:45. At 6 a.m. I went to bed. Margaret Calloway's car, a white Honda Civic, was still in the lot. When I came back at 10 p.m. for my 6th shift, the Civic was gone. Room 6's key was back on the pegboard. Warren had cleaned the room. Normal. Except that when I sat down at the desk that night, I felt something. A dissonance. Like a piano chord with one note slightly flat. I couldn't place it, but it nagged at me the way a word on the tip of your tongue nags at you, and I kept turning it over and over while I went through the motions of the shift. It was 2 a.m. during my corridor walk when I figured it out. Room 6 smelled like her, not perfume, just her. That specific combination of fleece and road dust and something warm and human. And the smell wasn't coming from inside the room. It was coming from the crack under the door. But the room was empty. The key was on the pegboard. Warren had cleaned it. I stood there in the corridor, staring at the thin yellow light leaking out from under the door of room 6, and I thought, the light is on. The room was supposed to be empty. The key was behind the counter, but the light was on. Protocol 8. If you see a door open to an occupied room, do not close it. Walk past it at a normal pace. Do not look inside. But this door wasn't open, and the room wasn't occupied. No rule covered this. The list had 17 items, and none of them told me what to do when an empty room had its lights on and smelled like a guest who had already left. I completed my circuit. I went back to the desk. I stared at the key to room 6 hanging on the pegboard and tried to talk myself into believing that Warren had left the light on during cleaning. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself. Night 7. Margaret Calloway checked in again. Same time, same green fleece, same broken suitcase, same gust of cold air. "Oh, thank God you're open," she said. "I've been driving since Albuquerque and I'm about to pass out." The exact same words, the same inflection, the same pause between open and I've. My hands went cold, not figuratively. My actual fingers went numb like I'd plunged them into ice water, because I recognized this. Protocol 11. If the same guest attempts to check in a second time during the same shift, do not acknowledge that you recognize them. Process the check-in as if it were the first. Assign them a different room. But this wasn't the same shift. This was a different night. She'd checked in, stayed, and left. This was a new visit, wasn't it? "We're always open," I heard myself say. "Just need a name and a card." Margaret Calloway. Purse. Digging. "And honey, do you have Dr. Pepper in that machine?" "I think we do." "Bless you." I processed her. Cash, one night. I gave her room 3, a different room because something in my gut told me to follow the spirit of Protocol 11, even though the letter didn't apply. She tipped me $3. She wheeled her broken suitcase down the hall. I sat at the desk and felt the room tilt slightly, like the building had settled an inch to the east. I pulled out my phone. I typed her name. Margaret Calloway, Cuba, New Mexico. Obituary. Survived by 2 daughters. August 9th, 2015. Dead for over 10 years. I put my phone face down on the counter. I listened to the footsteps on the roof. They'd started early, before midnight, faster than usual, like whoever was up there was pacing. And I thought about the $800. I thought about my car. I thought about the $43 that was now almost $3,000, because Warren paid cash every Monday, and I'd been eating cheap and saving every cent. I thought about how warm room 1 was, how the shower had good pressure, how I'd started sleeping through the night for the first time in months. I thought about all of that, and I stayed at the desk, and I did my corridor walk, and I changed the bulb, and I turned on the floodlights, and I went to bed. This is how it gets you, not with teeth, with comfort. I started watching for patterns. The numbers from the phone calls. I had 12 nights worth saved in my phone now. I laid them out and looked for repetition. There was some. Certain numbers came up more than others. 9, 14, 18. The reserved rooms. 31, which didn't seem to mean anything. 7, which appeared in almost every sequence. And 45, which I eventually realized was the total number of years the Sundowner Motor Lodge had been in operation. I looked that up too. The motel was built in 1981 by a man named Leonard Buell, Warren's father. The original business license was still on file with McKinley County. Leonard ran it until 1998, when he died of a heart attack in the office. Warren took over. There were no other employees listed in any record I could find, though the motel had clearly had staff over the years. The index cards on the diner corkboard weren't new. The thumbtack holes were layered. Warren had been posting that ad for years, which meant I wasn't the first night clerk. which meant others had done this job before me, which raised the obvious question: where were they? On night 9, I asked Warren about it. He was doing the handoff, putting on his hat, and I said it as casually as I could. "Warren, how many night clerks have you had?" He stopped with his hand on the door, didn't turn around. "A few." "What happened to them?" "They moved on." He opened the door. "Everybody moves on eventually." He left. I stood there with the chemical burn smell hanging in the air and the TV showing silent weather patterns over the four corners, and I thought, that's not an answer. Night 10. The man in the brown coat came. 4 a.m. I was at the desk, tired in that grainy underwater way you get in the small hours. The office door didn't open. I want to be clear about that. The door did not open. But suddenly he was there, standing by the vending machines exactly as described. Brown coat, long, past his knees. The kind of coat nobody wears anymore, like something from a 1940s noir film. He was tall, his face. And this bothered me more than anything else, more than the fact that he'd materialized in a closed room. His face was indistinct, not blurry, not hidden. Indistinct. Like my eyes couldn't hold the details. I could see a nose, a mouth, the architecture of a face, but if you asked me to describe him to a sketch artist, I'd have nothing. Protocol 12. Do not speak to him. Do not look directly at him. Continue your work. I looked at my book. I read the same paragraph 6 times. I could feel him in my peripheral vision, a tall brown shape standing perfectly still. No breath sounds, no shifting weight, no cough or sniffle or throat clear, just presence. He stayed for 32 minutes. I know because I watched the clock while pretending not to watch him. Then he wasn't there anymore. Not gone. He didn't leave. He just wasn't there. The space by the vending machines was empty, and it felt like it had always been empty. And the memory of him standing there had a slippery quality, like it was coated in something that made it hard to grip. I went into the back office and sat down even though Protocol 13 only applied if he spoke to me. I locked the door. I put my head in my hands. I thought about leaving. I thought about my car. I stayed. Night 12. This is the night it changed. This is the night I found the other ledger. I'd been looking for a pen. The one on the desk had run dry, and I was pulling open drawers, checking the usual junk drawer locations. The bottom drawer on the left side of the counter was stuck. I yanked it hard, and the whole face panel popped off, revealing that it wasn't a real drawer at all. It was a facade concealing a recessed shelf, and on that shelf was a steel lockbox. The lock was a simple combination. 3 digits. I tried the numbers that appeared most often in the phone sequences. 9, 14, 18. It opened. Inside was a ledger, not the guest ledger. That was a spiral-bound notebook where I recorded check-ins. This was a hardbound book, black leather, the pages thick and yellowed. It was old. The first entry was dated March 3rd, 1981. 2 months after the Sundowner opened. The handwriting changed throughout the book. At least 4 different hands, maybe 5. The first was tight and precise. Leonard Buell's, I assumed. The entries were structured like incident reports. Date, time, event, action taken. I started reading from the beginning. March 3rd, 1981, 2:17 a.m. Sound from the hills. Singing female voice, language unrecognized. Duration, 14 minutes. No guests reported disturbance. Logged. March 8th, 1981. 4 a.m. First appearance of the visitor. Male, brown coat. Stood in the office for 22 minutes. Did not speak. Did not acknowledge my presence. Left without opening the door. No damage or disturbance. March 15th, 1981. 11 p.m. First light failure. All exterior fixtures lost power simultaneously. Duration, 20 minutes. During blackout, observed movement in the parking lot. Multiple figures. Could not determine number or nature. Lights restored at 11:20. Lot was empty. Installed manual cutoff switch to control the timing. That last entry hit me like a slap. The 11 p.m. blackout. Protocol 4. It wasn't an arbitrary ritual. Leonard Buell had created it in response to something that happened. The 20-minute window wasn't random. It was the duration of the first event. He'd built the protocol around the phenomenon, like building a levee around a flood pattern. I kept reading. The entries grew more frequent over the months. The singing from the hills, the footsteps on the roof, the phone calls. Those started in June of 1981. The voices changed, but the format was always the same. A series of numbers, read calmly, without context. And then September 1981. September 14th, 1981. Guest in room 9 reported disturbance. Knocked on my door at 3 a.m., claimed someone was inside the room with them. I accompanied guest to room 9. Room was empty. Guest was standing next to me. I observed the guest was also inside the room, sitting on the bed, facing the wall. The guest beside me did not appear to see this. I moved the guest to another room. Room 9 was locked. I have closed it permanently. I had to set the book down after that entry. My hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly. From recognition. From the sensation of a worldview cracking. Of the thing you've been carefully ignoring suddenly standing up and looking you in the face. Room 14 was closed in 1983. Same type of incident. A duplication, a doubling, a guest being somehow in two places at once. Room 18 was closed in 1987 under different circumstances that Leonard described only as contamination event, irreversible. Details in supplemental file. I found no supplemental file. Leonard's entries ended in 1998, the year he died. The next hand was Warren's, younger and messier, growing neater over the years. Warren's entries were less clinical and more personal. He wrote like a man talking to himself. October 2002, another clerk gone. This one lasted 3 months. Found his room empty, bed made, key on the nightstand. Car still in the lot. No note. That's 4 now. I don't think they leave. I think the building absorbs them. I think the rooms need people in them. And when there aren't enough guests, it takes the staff. I read that entry twice. I think the building absorbs them. I think the rooms need people in them. I put the ledger back. I closed the lockbox. I replaced the drawer panel. I finished my shift. I did not sleep well. Night 13. I almost left. I packed my bag. I sat on the bed in room 1 with my keys in my hand and my Sentra's engine cold in the desert dark, and I thought about all the logical reasons to go. A dead woman was checking in repeatedly. A faceless man was materializing in the office. The building might be eating people. But $3,000 in my pocket. A room that was warm. A routine that, if I followed it, kept me safe. And outside the sundowner, what? My car? $43 worth of life? DoorDash? Another Love's Travel stop bathroom where I talk to myself in the mirror? I unpacked my bag. This is the part where you judge me. Go ahead. You're doing it from a place with heat and a bed and a full refrigerator, and I respect that. But you don't know what it's like to have nothing and then have something and face the prospect of having nothing again. You will do things that don't make sense. You will tolerate the intolerable. You will sit in a room and know that the building you're in might not be a building at all, and you will stay because staying is warm and leaving is cold. I went to the desk at 10 p.m. I did the job. The footsteps came. The phone rang. I wrote the numbers. I walked the corridor. But this time during my corridor walk, something was different. Room 6. Margaret's room from her first visit had its light on again, and this time the door was open. Just a crack, maybe 2 inches. A thin vertical stripe of warm light falling across the corridor floor. Protocol 8. If you see a door open to an occupied room, do not close it. Walk past it at a normal pace. Do not look inside. But room 6 wasn't occupied. The key was on the pegboard. No one had checked into room 6 tonight. I walked past it. I kept my eyes forward. But in the half-second the doorway was in my peripheral vision, I saw something, a shape, sitting on the edge of the bed, a woman in a green fleece. Not moving, just sitting, facing the wall, like the guest in Leonard's 1981 entry, sitting on the bed, facing the wall. I completed my circuit in 2 minutes flat. I started breaking protocol on night 15, not dramatically. I wasn't throwing open reserved rooms or shouting at the man in the brown coat. I was making small deviations, testing the edges, because I needed to understand what I was dealing with, and the rules, I was beginning to realize, were not a complete picture. They were a management strategy. They were Leonard Buell's best guess at how to coexist with something. And they'd been refined over decades, but they weren't gospel. They were human. And whatever the Sundowner was built on, or built from, wasn't. My first deviation, I looked out the window during the 11 p.m. blackout. Protocol 4 said not to. Find something to read, it said. And for 14 nights, I'd obeyed. But on night 15, I turned off the floods at 11, counted to 60, and then walked to the office window and looked out. The parking lot was not empty. There were people in it, maybe a dozen, standing in a loose cluster near the center of the lot, facing the building. They weren't moving. They were just standing there in the dark, and I could see them because there was no moon, but the stars at this elevation put out more light than you'd expect. And my eyes had adjusted. They were dressed for different decades. I could make out a woman in a long skirt, a man in coveralls, someone in what looked like a military uniform. They were all facing the building with their heads tilted slightly upward, like they were looking at something on the roof. Or like they were waiting for something to look back. At 11:20, I turned the floods on. The lot was empty, the gravel was undisturbed. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. I sat down. My heart was running like a sewing machine, and I thought, those were the missing clerks. My second deviation was bigger. Night 17. I kept one of the old bulbs. Protocol 14 said to change the east corridor bulb at 4:30 a.m. and discard the old one in the dumpster. Use only the bulbs from the red box. Don't keep old bulbs inside the structure. I changed the bulb as instructed, but instead of taking the old one to the dumpster, I put it in my coat pocket and brought it back to room 1. I wanted to look at it. I wanted to understand what was different about these bulbs, why Warren ordered them special from Albuquerque, why the protocol specified the red box and only the red box. In my room, under the overhead light, I examined the old bulb. It was a standard A19, soft white, nothing unusual, except inside the glass, there was something. A fine residue coating the interior surface, not dust. Something granular and slightly iridescent, like ground-up mica. I held the bulb up to the light and turned it, and the residue caught the glow and refracted it into tiny prismatic flecks. It was beautiful, actually, like holding a snow globe filled with crushed gemstones. I set it on the nightstand and went to sleep. I woke up at 3 p.m. Unusual, I normally slept until 6 or 7, to a sound, a low hum, just below the threshold of hearing, more felt than heard, a vibration in my teeth and my sinuses, like standing next to a running engine. The bulb on the nightstand was glowing. not brightly. A faint, pulsing amber, like an ember. It wasn't plugged into anything. It was just sitting there on the pressed wood nightstand, glowing with its own light, and the residue inside was moving, swirling, like something alive was swimming inside the glass. I picked it up. It was warm. I took it to the dumpster. I threw it in. I went back to my room and sat on the bed and pressed my palms against my eyes and breathed until my heartbeat came down. The rules were not arbitrary. The rules were a containment system, and I had nearly brought something inside. Night 18. Warren was late for the handoff. He usually arrived at 6:30 a.m., right as I was leaving. This time, he didn't come until almost 8. When he walked into the office, he looked wrong. His face was gray. The lines were deeper. He moved like a man carrying something heavy that you couldn't see. "You okay?" I asked. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "You've been reading the book." It wasn't a question. I didn't deny it. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. But there was no anger in his voice. He sounded tired. He sounded like a man who'd been waiting for this conversation for a long time and was relieved to finally have it. "What is this place, Warren?" He sat down in the chair behind the counter. He took off his hat and held it in his lap. His hair was thinner than I'd realized. He looked old. He looked ancient. "My father built this motel in 1981, he said. But he didn't pick the spot picked him. He was driving down 602 and his truck died right here, right in this exact location. Engine wouldn't turn over. He walked to town, got a tow, had the truck fixed. Next week drove the same route. Truck died in the same spot." He paused, looked at the TV. The weather map was showing a pressure system over the Rockies. "Third time it happened, he got out and just stood here. He said he could feel it. Something under the ground. Not evil. He was always very clear about that. Not evil, just other. Something that existed on its own terms, the way a river exists. You don't call a river evil because it drowns someone. It's just doing what it does." "What does it do?" "It collects," Warren said. "People, moments. It collects experiences. It keeps them. It plays them back. The guests you see checking in again and again. They're not ghosts. They're recordings, impressions. The land captures them the way a record captures music, and the motel is the needle." "Margaret Calloway," I said. He nodded. "She stays here once, in 2015. The land liked her. The land kept her. Now she checks in every few days. Same words, same suitcase. She doesn't know. It's not her. It's the recording." "And the people in the parking lot during the blackout?" His eyes sharpened. "You looked." "Yes. Those aren't recordings. Those are the ones who went deeper. The clerks who stayed too long or broke too many rules or tried to understand it. The land doesn't just record them. It incorporates them. They become part of the substrate, part of the machine." "Why the rules?" I asked. "Why not just shut the place down, bulldoze it?" Warren smiled. The saddest smile I've ever seen on a human face. "Because it has to be managed. If there's no motel, there's no structure, no containment. The rules aren't for the building, Emmett. They're for the land. The building is the frame. The rules are the grammar. Without them, the thing underneath just reaches, uncontrolled. My father figured that out the hard way. Before the protocols, before the rules. People went missing on this stretch of 602. Hikers, drivers, Navajo shepherds who knew this land better than anyone. They'd just vanish. The motel gave it a shape. The rules gave it limits. The lights, the bulbs, the timing. All of it constrains the phenomenon to this property, to these rooms, to these hours. The bulbs, I said. The residue inside them. The bulbs absorb it. whatever it is. Energy, presence, whatever word you want. The corridor is the most active zone. The bulb soaks it up overnight. You replace it. You throw the old one out. You keep the cycle going. You're draining the swamp every night so it doesn't flood. And if you don't, then room 9 happens, room 14 happens, room 18 happens. The recordings get too dense. They start overlapping. They start interacting. And when recordings interact, they stop being recordings and become something else. He put his hat back on. He stood up. My father ran this place for 17 years. I've run it for 27. That's 44 years of management. 44 years of bulbs and blackouts and corridor walks and phone calls. I can't do it anymore. My body is giving out. The doctor in Gallup says I have maybe a year, maybe less. Emphysema. He looked at me and his eyes were clear and blue and utterly direct. I need someone to take over, not the night shift, the whole thing, the management, the understanding. Someone who can follow the rules but also knows when to adapt them. Because this thing changes, Emmett. Slowly over decades, but it changes. It tests the boundaries. Room 18 didn't exist as a problem until 1987. The man in the brown coat didn't appear until 1998, after my father died. New phenomena require new protocols. The rules are a living document. Warren, you don't have to answer now, but I need you to know what you're part of, and I need you to know that the choice is real. You can leave tonight, take your money and go. I'll find someone else. There's always someone else. Someone broke, someone desperate, someone who'll pin an index card to a truck stop corkboard and change their life. He walked to the door. But Emmett, the ones who stay, the clerks who get absorbed, that doesn't happen to the ones who respect it. It happens to the ones who fight it, or fear it, or try to expose it. My father lived and died here, and he stayed human. He stayed himself, because he treated it like a job. Not a mystery, not a horror story, a job. He left. I sat in the office for a long time after he was gone, watching the sun come up through the window, the desert going from black to purple to gold, and I thought about my father, who died working a job he hated because it kept the lights on, and my mother, who died 6 months later because she didn't know how to live without him, and my sister in Ohio who doesn't call because I remind her of both of them. I thought about the Sentra, about the Love's travel stop, about the $43. I thought about Margaret Calloway, who tipped me $3 every time, who asked about Dr. Pepper every time, who was dead and didn't know it and seemed happier than I'd been in years. That was 2 weeks ago. I'm still here. I need to tell you about last night, because last night is why I'm writing this. Last night is the reason I'm sitting in room 1 at 2 in the afternoon with the curtains closed and my phone in my hands and a feeling in my chest like I swallowed a stone. Last night, a man checked in at 3:47 a.m. Protocol 10. Guests between 3 and 4 a.m. get rooms 1 through 6 only, minimal eye contact. I processed him fast. He was young, mid-20s, thin, nervous. He paid cash. He gave his name as Daniel Voss. I gave him room 5. He hesitated at the counter. "Hey," he said, "is this place, is it okay?" "It's fine," I said, not meeting his eyes. "Quiet night." He nodded and left. I watched him walk down the corridor on the security monitor. Warren had installed cameras after I found the ledger, a small gesture of modernization. Daniel Voss walked to room 5, unlocked the door, and went inside. At 4 a.m., the man in the brown coat appeared. Same spot, same coat, same indistinct face. He stood by the vending machines for 26 minutes. I didn't look at him. I read my book. But at 4:26, 4 minutes before he usually departed, he spoke. Not to me. He said a name. He said Daniel. My blood went cold. Protocol 13. If the man in the brown coat speaks to you, immediately go into the back office and lock the door. But he hadn't spoken to me. He'd spoken a name, a guest's name. There was no protocol for this. There was nothing in the rules, nothing in Leonard's ledger, nothing in Warren's entries that described the man in the brown coat speaking a guest's name. I froze. I sat behind the counter and gripped the edge until my knuckles ached, and I watched the man in the brown coat in my peripheral vision, and I waited. He said it again. Daniel. Then he turned, not toward me, toward the corridor, toward the rooms, and he walked. He walked out of the office and into the hallway, which he had never done in any entry in the ledger, in any protocol, in any version of the rules going back 45 years. The man in the brown coat had always stayed by the vending machines. He had always been contained. I heard his footsteps in the corridor, slow, deliberate. And then I heard him stop, and I heard a knock. 3 knocks, measured and patient on what I knew. With absolute ice-water certainty, was the door to room 5. I stood up. I went to the security monitor. The corridor camera showed the man in the brown coat standing outside room 5, his back to the camera, his hand raised. The door to room 5 opened. Daniel Voss stood in the doorway, squinting, confused. And the man in the brown coat stepped inside. And the door closed. I stared at the monitor. I waited. 1 minute. 2. 5. At 4:35, the door to room 5 opened. The man in the brown coat walked out. He walked back up the corridor, into the office, past me, close enough that I could have touched his coat, and returned to his spot by the vending machines. He stood there for another 3 minutes. Then he was gone. I went to room 5. I knocked. No answer. I used the master key. I opened the door. The room was empty. The bed was made. No suitcase, no personal items, no sign that anyone had been there. Daniel Voss was gone. Not checked out. Gone. His car, a blue Toyota Corolla, was still in the parking lot. His name was still in the ledger. But room 5 was empty and clean and smelled like nothing. I called Warren at 6:15 a.m. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. The man in the brown coat took a guest, I said. Silence on the line, long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. Then Warren's voice, thin and flat. Which room? 5. Was the guest between hours? 3 to 4? Yes, 3:47. Another silence. Then, that's new. Warren, what do I do? Nothing. There's nothing to do. The guest is part of it now. He's been recorded. But this, the visitor leaving the office, that's new behavior. That's the kind of change I was talking about. It's adapting. To what? To us. To you. It knows there's someone new here. Someone who reads the book and keeps the old bulbs and looks out the window during blackout. It's adjusting its boundaries because you've been adjusting yours. His words sat in my stomach like lead. Emmett, listen to me. You need to write a new protocol, number 18. Something to cover this. Something to prevent the visitor from reaching a guest. Think about what conditions allowed it. The timing, the room assignment, whatever factor made it possible, and close that gap. Warren, I'm a night clerk. I'm not qualified to. You're the most qualified person alive. You're there. You're paying attention. That's all my father had. That's all I had. Qualification is just attention plus time. He coughed. A bad cough, deep and wet. Write the rule, Emmett. Add it to the list, and then follow it. He hung up. I've been sitting here for 3 hours. I have the typewritten list in front of me. 17 protocols, 45 years of accumulated wisdom, trial, and error. The condensed survival manual of 2 men who spent their lives containing something they couldn't explain. and now I need to add to it. Here's what I think happened. Daniel Voss checked in during the vulnerable window, 3 to 4 a.m. when Protocol 10 is in effect. I assigned him room 5, but Protocol 10 says rooms 1 through 6, and room 5 is in the East Corridor. The East Corridor is the most active zone. It's where the bulb collects residue. It's where room 6 keeps its lights on. It's the vector. I should never have put him in room 5. Rooms 1 through 6 were designated before the East Corridor became the hot zone. The protocol is outdated, the safe rooms have shifted, and nobody updated the list. So here's Protocol 18, written on the back of the typewritten sheet in my own hand. 18. Guests arriving between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. must be assigned to rooms 1 through 4 only. Do not assign rooms 5 or 6 during this window. If rooms 1 through 4 are fully occupied, do not accept the guest. Turn them away. This is not optional. It's imperfect. I know that. It might be wrong, but it's based on observation, on pattern, on the best information I have. It's what Leonard would have done. It's what Warren did. And tomorrow night, I'll test it. And if it holds, it becomes part of the system. And if it doesn't hold, I'll learn from the failure and write Protocol 19. There are things I haven't told you. I haven't told you about the singing from the hills, which I finally heard on night 14. It's not singing, exactly. It's a vibration, a frequency, something that uses the human ear the way the motel uses the building. As a frame, a delivery system. It carries information. I don't know what kind. I don't understand it. But when I hear it, I dream things. Detailed, specific dreams about people I've never met. Living lives I've never lived. A woman hanging laundry outside a pueblo in 1947. A truck driver eating pie at a diner that doesn't exist anymore. A child playing in a dry riverbed, looking up at the sky like it's looking at him. I think these are the recordings. I think the singing transmits them. And I think the land has been doing this for a lot longer than 45 years. I haven't told you about the numbers. The ones the woman reads over the phone. I finally figured out what they are, or at least what I think they are. They're room assignments, future room assignments. The numbers correspond to rooms and dates, and if I cross-reference them with the check-in ledger, they predict, roughly, not perfectly, which rooms will have guests and which will be empty on any given night. The phone call is a forecast. Someone or something is telling the night clerk where the density will be, where to reinforce, where to watch. I haven't told you that I've started talking to Margaret. Not the real Margaret. The recording. She checks in every 4 or 5 nights now. Same script, same suitcase. But last time she paused in the middle of her routine and looked at me. Really looked at me. And said, "You're a good kid." That wasn't part of the recording. That was new. That was something generated in the moment. Some emergent behavior rising up from 11 years of accumulated impressions of a woman who was kind to strangers and liked Dr. Pepper. I said, "Thank you, ma'am." She smiled. She wheeled her suitcase down the hall. And I thought, this is what the land does. It keeps people, not their bodies. Their patterns, their warmth, the shape of who they were. It plays them back not because it's cruel, but because it's a medium, a recording medium, like a vinyl record, like Warren said. And the motel is the turntable, and the rules are the speed control. And without someone managing the needle, the music turns to noise. I don't know how long I'll stay. Warren says he has a year. Maybe I'll be here for a year, maybe longer. The money is good. The room is warm. The work is specific and meaningful in a way that no logistics job ever was. I am, for the first time in my adult life, essential. If I don't show up, bad things happen. If I don't change the bulb, the corridor saturates. If I don't walk the halls, the doors open. If I don't write the new protocols, the old ones erode. There is a thing under the desert south of Gallup, New Mexico that has existed for longer than human memory, and I am its night manager, and the pay is $800 a week in cash, and the health plan is questionable, but the job security is eternal. That's a joke. I make jokes now when I talk about this, because the alternative is to think too hard about Daniel Voss and where he is and what he's experiencing and whether he's aware of it. I think about his blue Toyota, still sitting in the lot. Warren said to leave it. He said it'll be gone within a week, the way all the cars eventually disappear, absorbed into the system like everything else. I think about the figures in the parking lot during the blackout, the clerks who came before me, standing in the dark, looking up. Are they suffering? Are they conscious? Or are they just patterns? Like Margaret. Impressions played on repeat by a thing that doesn't understand what it's holding, only that it must hold. I don't know. And here's the thing that keeps me awake during the day when I should be sleeping. I'm not sure the question matters, because whether they're suffering or not, whether this thing is malicious or indifferent, the motel exists. The land exists. The phenomenon exists. And someone has to sit at the desk from 10 to 6 and answer the phone and write the numbers and change the bulb and walk the corridor and not look back at the building when they leave at dawn. Someone has to follow the rules. And when the rules aren't enough, someone has to write new ones. I'm that someone now. One last thing. This morning, after I called Warren, after I wrote Protocol 18, I went outside to clear my head. I walked around the back of the building, past the dumpster, to the edge of the property where the gravel turns to dirt, and the dirt turns to desert. The sun was up. The sky was that ridiculous New Mexico blue that doesn't look real, and the mesas in the distance were striped red and gold, and the air smelled like sage and cold stone. And standing at the edge of the property, right where the motel's influence ends and the open desert begins, there was a man, young, thin, wearing a t-shirt and jeans and no shoes, which is insane in February on this terrain. Daniel Voss. He was facing away from me, looking out at the hills. I almost called out to him. My mouth opened, but something stopped me. Something in the way he was standing. Too still, too balanced, like a mannequin propped upright. And as I watched, he tilted his head, the way the figures in the parking lot tilt their heads. And I understood that this wasn't Daniel Voss anymore. This was the recording, the impression, already captured, already playing back, already part of the library. And then he took a step forward, into the desert, away from the motel. That shouldn't happen. The recordings stay within the property. Margaret checks into her room. The figures stand in the lot. They don't leave. They've never left. He took another step, and another, walking slowly, barefoot, toward the hills, toward the singing. I watched until he was a speck, then I went back inside. The phenomenon is adapting. It's expanding. And the rules I have aren't enough. I need to write more. I need to understand more. I need to watch and listen and document and adjust, the way Leonard did, the way Warren did, the way whoever comes after me will need to do. If you're reading this, and you're broke, and you're desperate, and you see an index card on a corkboard in a truck stop diner outside Gallup, I'm not going to tell you not to take the job. I'm not going to pretend there's a better option, because for some of us, there isn't. The economy is what it is. The world is what it is. But if you come here, read the rules, follow them, and when they stop being enough, and they will, write new ones. Because the thing under the sundowner doesn't sleep. It doesn't forget. And it is always, always listening. Room 6 has its light on again. It's 2 in the afternoon and the light is on. and I can smell fleece and road dust from under the door. And somewhere out in the desert, Daniel Voss is still walking. My shift starts in 8 hours. I should get some sleep.